What's going on, guys? I'm back with another video. Today I'm going to be installing Extreme Rate's Tactile Clicky Hair Triggers. It's going to be installed on my purple controller, which is a model CFI-ZCT1W A, and the motherboard is a BDM-020. I've done one of these trigger installations before, but that one's actually outdated. That's the reason why I'm going to be doing this one. They changed some stuff, especially because of the BDM-020 controller. And I do have the Rise 4 installed on my control, so if anyone has any of the Remap Kit installed as well, they'll be able to see how to take it apart, install the triggers, and then put everything back together. As you can see, I have some of the tools on my table, some that I might or might not use. In the box, like always, they're going to pack tools and screws. These are the pieces that are going to be installed inside the triggers. And these are the Tactile Clicky Hair Triggers. There is also the standard version, which only says Clicky Hair Triggers. The Tactiles will have the triggers blue, and these also make keyboard or mouse clicks a lot more than the standard version. Once these are installed, I'm going to be able to show a sound comparison between the Tactile and the standard version. To get started, I need to take my back piece off. To do that, I'm going to grab over here on this edge, on the bottom of it, and then I can pull up. And I'm doing it carefully because these buttons can come off, especially the middle button here, which is for remapping mode, and I don't want that to fly away, so that's why I do it that way. You could always decide to also flip it down and then pull it away. There's two screws, one on the left and one on the right. I need to take both of them out, and then the board will be able to come out. Those screws aren't the best, so I do have to be careful with not stripping them. Now I can lift this board up carefully. Flip it over. There's a black lock right here. All I have to do is flip it up. Once that's done, I can actually just pull away. I'm going to move on to taking out the L1 and R1 buttons. With my prying tool, I can dig under the L1 around the middle, push it up, and it should be able to come out. Watch out because it'll pop out and it could end up flying away. Same thing for R1. Now I'm going to remove the trim. I need to try and get inside one of these edges. Once I got one, I can just lift up. It also locks around the middle, so you can just dig under and then push up. Once all of this is lifted up, you can actually grab one side of the trim, push upwards, and it'll come out. Now I have 4 screws that I need to take out. I'm gonna look at the side of my control. I need to get this open. If I'm able to get a prying tool in, I'm gonna keep going up. And the hard part is around this area. Those locks can be pretty tough, so you just gotta push back and forth. You can see it's open there. Now you just gotta do the same thing to the other side. If one prying tool doesn't work, you can always try another one. I got that one open. I have 2 locks on the bottom. I can carefully push that one outward. The other side as well. And you'll be able to feel how the back shell kind of starts to come off. Once all that's done, you can grab one side of your back shell, push it up towards the control, and it'll come off that easily. If you have the Remap Kit, you just need to watch out for this cable. If you don't have the Remap Kit, you can just ignore this part. For those who do, you need to take these cables out. Take them out of the connection. And you need to lift this off the battery. If it doesn't re-stick, you can always try some double-sided tape to stick it back down. I'm going to get the back mic out of this slot. I'm going to grab it by the silicone piece just to be safe so that I'm not touching the cable itself. I'm going to remove the battery. I'll lift it up from the battery holder, then disconnect it. There's one screw to remove the battery holder. To take the holder off, I'm going to be careful watching for any cables that might end up getting in the way. Now I'm going to have to disconnect 4 cables. I do find it easier to use my hands, but you guys can use whatever you feel will help you take out these cables. I also like to straighten the one up here, which is for the touchpad, and the one down here for the front cable. For BDM-020, it's actually easier to remove the whole black casing. If you have a BDM-010, you would have to actually go under the motherboard to remove 2 screws that are under right here and here. But for 020, you actually just have to remove the screw that's here and right here. Once that's done, you can lift up the black casing. I like to grab onto the rumbles. And now you can see the black casing is off. I moved my front shell to the side. When buying these triggers, please be aware that they were made with FPS players in mind. These triggers help you activate your R and L buttons quicker since the travel time is less than the original. The downside is that you have to deactivate haptic feedback, and they're not recommended to use with racing games. If you use it for racing games, you won't have the slow click option. So in other words, you won't be able to maintain a speed while you're driving. If anything, it's going to go from 0 to max speed. And always remember that there is a risk of maybe messing up your control somehow. If you do things correctly, slowly and patiently, you can get it done. To get one of my triggers out, you can see there's 2 screws on the left and 2 on the right. I'll start out by doing the left side, and now I'm going to take out the one on the right. I'm going to start out with my L triggers. I need to disconnect this cable to get to the screw, and now I can remove the screw. Now flip it over. There's 3 screws to remove. Once that's done, this black cover can come out. By the way guys, I'm not going to show how to install it on both. These triggers are built the same way, so I don't think there's any reason to have to show it twice. Just showing it on one trigger should be enough. Same thing for these, they're built the same way, so it doesn't matter if you put this one in the L buttons or R buttons and this one as well. At this point I want to be ready with the pieces that I need, so I'm just going to cut 2 of these and 2 of these. These right here are used for the BDM-010 version. These are for BDM-020, and these will go to either one. To take one of the pieces out, you can twist it off if you'd like, but I prefer to use my wire cutters just so that I can get as close to the edge as possible. If you do see that some of the extra plastic is sticking out, this is where the wire cutters can help. You can just cut that extra piece off, and now you can see it's perfectly rounded. Before I continue, I can show a comparison between the original unmodded trigger and a clicky modded trigger. Here's the travel time between both. This one's fully clicked. You can see how far it presses down, and here's the original. It touches this black casing, this one doesn't. And you could even hear the clicky sounds out of it. I'll put it closer to the mic. Now here's the sound for the original. Really doesn't make any sound at all. Now I'm going to press my R1. You can see it's about a little tap. Here's the original. And you're able to see how far down that goes. And here's the sound test. The next piece that's going to be removed is this one. You can just grab it and lift it up. The wheel, you don't necessarily have to remove it, but if you do, just make sure that when it goes back in, this end of the wheel needs to match up with this shape, which is about like a half circle. This is what it looks like when it's out. This is the bottom part. Just match up those 2 shapes and it should go in. The next step is to take out this rod. It's what's holding the trigger inside. Now the trigger can come out. Next I'm going to grab the bigger piece that I cut out, and here's my L2 trigger. This is how my little piece is going to be facing. I need to insert this bottom part to go in right here. It goes in pretty easily. Once it is in, just try and make sure you push it down. If you have something with like silicone or rubber, you can use that to push down on it. That way you don't hurt your fingers, and that should be good. Here's the L1. Now you need this little piece. This one's a lot easier. All you gotta do is fit this end inside this hole. It is going to be tough the further down it goes. So again, grab something with silicone or rubber, push against it, and it'll help you push it in all the way. This black piece stays in pretty nicely. You can see if I flip it down, it won't come out on its own. I'll tap it a little bit and still nothing. It's pretty secure. Now I need to take out the rubber or pad and the conductive film as well. Try to take it slow with this. You don't want to damage it in case you want to use it later on. You're not going to be using that rubber pad anymore. Now you're going to grab your tactile trigger. This is how you're going to insert it. Just make sure that it goes into that slot. You can use maybe like a plastic prying tool to help you get it in there. To put my trigger back in, I have to make sure that this spring is going to go inside that little slot right there, and then make sure that this end of the trigger hooks onto this part, and this needs to go inside this slot. Once it's in, you can even see how the spring went down a little more. This part is inside. And to put that rod back in, make sure you match up those two holes together. It'll make it easier for the rod to go in. There you go. For this part, there's a certain way that it needs to be installed. Originally, it would be installed like this. You can see those 4 holes right there. When it gets installed, you would just put it over so that those 3 holes are still showing. And that's what helps the trigger have full motion when you're using haptic feedback. But because you have these clicky triggers installed, you won't be doing it that way. Extreme Rate shows it, and I think that's because it'll eliminate that full motion in case anyone has haptic feedback, and that's the reason why some people do end up having problems, because you're not supposed to have haptic feedback on. And this is how you're gonna install it the new way with this kit installed. You can see there's gaps here, so we're not gonna pay attention to this anymore. We're going to count 4 of those gaps. This is going to be 1, this is going to be 2, this is 3, and this is 4. The way that it's gonna go in, you're gonna put it on that 4th slot, which would be right here. So now this is the part that's supposed to go inside that 4th slot, which would be right here. Since it kind of moved, you can see I counted, this is the 4th one. And there it is. You can see I installed it where this end went inside that 4th slot. So again, here's 1, 2, 3, and this is inside the 4th one. When you move this around, it barely moves. It doesn't have that range of motion that it did before. I can put the cover back on it, and I'll put all the screws back in. Something I should mention about these triggers, Extreme Rate had shown that you can cut these wires off because sometimes I guess the motors end up acting up. So it shows that it's optional for you to cut these, and then you would just have to cover them with electrical tape. I chose not to do that. My last Clicky Hair Trigger kit went perfectly. I'm hoping that I'm not going to have any issues, and it is optional to do that. Now that I have all screws back in, I can connect this cable. Once it seems like the cable is a little in there, I'm going to grab my ceramic tweezers and push down on these 2 ends on the left and the right. And that should do it. Now that I have my kit installed, I can put both triggers back in. Here's my L2. I just have to line it up with the screw holes. And all you have to do is just screw them back in. This is my R2. Also, when it's going in, make sure that you watch out for these cables, the rumble cables, because the motor is supposed to go in through there. Here's a back view of when it's going in. That's done, and the triggers are back into the black casing. To put it back in the front shell, I want to make sure that this cable is going more outward down this way so that it doesn't get stuck underneath the motherboard. And the touchpad, try and make it straight so that it goes through this gap right here. Once it's in, screw the casing back in. Your touchpad cable should have gone through that gap up here, and the front mic connection should be over the motherboard. At this point, I can reconnect everything. The 4 cables, which is the trigger ones, touchpad, and the front mic. And what I usually like to tell everyone is that when you're putting these cables back in, if it seems like it's not going in, you can usually just wiggle a tiny bit left to right while pushing down, and you'll start to see how it's going down. Now I need to put my battery holder back in. I'm going to make sure that my rumble cables go underneath here, and that goes for the left and the right side. And also make sure that your back cable is going to be top of the battery holder. Just like that, rumble cables are in, back mic is on the top. Now screw the battery holder back in. Put the back mic inside its slot. When the back mic is back in, there's this tiny piece right here that can secure the cable, and all you have to do is just push down on it. I can put the battery back in. If you have the Remap Kit, all you have to do is stick this down and reconnect the cables. I also need to reconnect this cable back into my Remap board, which means I need to get this through the back shell. I can place my Remap board back in and screw it back down. To put the back shell in, I need to bring this top part over the L and R buttons. Once it's in there, you can start to push down on that top part, and you should be able to press down on the rest of the sides and the bottom. You need to secure it back down in the middle right here just by pushing towards the front shell. You're gonna hear it click, and you can even see how it locks down. I'm also gonna put my buttons and cover for my remap kit. I have 4 last screws to put back in. To put the trim back on, I need to put these 2 ends inside here. Once I got it through, I can just press down around the middle. You're going to hear a bunch of clicks. I'm gonna slide my finger on the left side and on the right side. And if I see there's a gap here, then I'll just push it down. The final step to complete this installation is my L1 and R1 buttons. To put them in, I need these 2 parts to go inside this gap. Once I got it through, I just have to push it down. The installation is finally complete. Quick summary about these triggers: the travel time is less than the original triggers. Haptic feedback should be turned off. They're also not recommended for racing games. These were mainly made for FPS players. Now that it's fully assembled, I can do a sound test between the tactile triggers and the original triggers. On my left side I have the Tactile Clicky installed, and on the right side I have original. Here's the sound test for the tactile. Here's the sound test for the original unmodded. Here's the demonstration for the travel time between both. The travel time for the tactiles is a lot less than the originals, and that goes for all 4 triggers. And like I mentioned before, with the kit installed, it'll make your triggers sound like keyboard and mouse clicks. And if you are into shooters and you mainly play that, you don't use haptic feedback or don't care for it, and you keep it off, then this could be a really useful kit for you. And that's it for this video. I have something a little different coming to the channel in the future, so stay tuned for that. And like always, thank you for the continuous support, and I'll be back with another one.